Alright, so this is gonna be part 6 to what if Deku had manifest. So with that being said, I gotta say a few things. First off, I think today, I'm not sure, I might do a double upload, basically doing this video as well as what if Deku had the Black Light Virus redo, since that was my first what if and a lot of people like that series, and if I do a redo it could really help people really transition better to the series. Also, I wanted to wait a bit to do it because with the things happening with Corona and things like that, my latest video from it basically got limited ads just because it had the word virus in it, and I think that's kind of dumb, but it does make sense since there are a lot of people trying to profit off of this virus, and it's really scummy that people try to do that, or they spread false information about the virus, and again, that's really scummy and they shouldn't be able to make a profit off of that. But my video wasn't like that at all. It just happened to have the word virus in the title, but I think I'll just get around that by just not having the word virus. I'll just have it say what if Deku had blacklight, and just leave it at that. But yeah, so in the last part we just basically got done with the sports festival with, I believe, Deku actually winning. With Deku winning, it makes him a bigger target for villains. Well, maybe not bigger target, but they know of his presence more, similar to how Bakugo was. But instead of looking at him as someone as a potential villain, because how Bakugo acted when he won, even though it was very aggressive, the villains would have seen that as something that they could use. But with Deku, it isn't like that. He would have been calm, even happy that he got first place, like most people would. So he isn't targeted for that reason. But Bakugo, since he would have got second place, would have gotten still targeted by villains because of how he acted. It'd be very similar to in canon, I believe, but maybe not as extreme, since he didn't feel like Deku wasn't trying, and he doesn't feel like the win was just given to him, just how it was in canon. So it'd be a little bit different. So as they get done with the ceremony and they get their awards, this is where Deku would go back to the changing room, and this is basically the locker room, and he would see Ida, and this is where they have this kind of weird interaction where Ida's kind of acting strange, and Deku doesn't know why at this point, but he has a guess, and that is, the hero killer. He would have seen on TV, on the news, that his father, or not father, I mean brother would have been very gravely injured by Stain. And Ida, he isn't showing normal signs of grief or even remorse, and this is what's really tricking up Deku at this point. He doesn't know why it's happening, so he keeps an eye out on Ida so that he doesn't do anything too foolish. So we would get to the next day, and this is where they actually choose their hero name. So I've seen a lot of comments on what his hero name should be, and a lot of people wanted to be Moon Eater because Tamaki is Sun Eater, so it kind of makes sense. So there's also another name that people want, and that's Chimera, but I guess I'll put a poll on this video whether you want it to be Moon Eater or Chimera. But for now, let's call it Moon Eater because I'm pretty sure that's gonna win. But those are the two big names I saw in the comments below. So with everyone basically everyone choosing their name, Ida, I believe in canon, picked his just normal name because he wasn't ready to pick up the name Ingenium yet. So that's what he would do in this one as well. He would just pick his own name, similar to Todoroki. And Deku, let's just say he picked Sun Eater for this. So people would ask him why did he pick that? And I think Midnight would know, but I don't think she would. I think she would say it, or she would point it out. She would say, "Oh, you're picking Moon Eater? Is that a acknowledge, or is that a reference to your brother's name?" And Deku would be like, "Well, yeah, he's always been there for me, and we have the same quirk, so I thought it would be a pretty good idea to have something similar to him." And this is where, the class would be like, "Whoa, what's your brother's hero name?" And Deku would be like, "Well, his is Sun Eater." And a lot of people would be really interested in that. And they would ask, why is his name that? And this is where Deku would give him like secondhand knowledge, because I think that Tamaki would say it, but he would kind of not say too much about it. So he would say that, from what my brother told me, he said that his friend said that he is so, if basically explains the kind of relationship that Mirio and Tamaki have. It's basically saying that Tamaki used to call Mirio the sun. He basically is bright as a sun, and this is where Mirio would always retort saying, "If I'm the sun, you must be something better, something that will eclipse everyone, a Sun Eater." And that's where the kind of the name comes from. So after that, this is where everyone would have to choose their internship. So I would believe Deku would not get the most. In fact, I would still believe it would be Todoroki, just on the fact that he is the son of Endeavor, the number 2 hero at the time. So that's really why I think Deku would get a couple internships, more than it does in canon. And Bakugo as well would get as many, just because of how flashy his stuff was. So in this one, All Might would still have written that letter to his former master, that being Gran Torino. And Gran Torino would have wanted to meet Deku just to see how the new predecessor would be like, and without the knowledge of All Might, obviously, because All Might would have, I believe he was surprised in canon that it actually happened. So Deku would have went with Gran Torino just because he was All Might's former teacher. I'm not gonna say he's gonna go with Fat Gum just yet. That will be later on. So after that, everyone would choose their basic internship, and Aizawa would tell him to choose wisely, because a lot of people regret their internships later on. So Ito would actually pick Manuel, the normal hero, just so he could get closer to Stain, because Manuel is in the city and where Stain should be popping up next. So this is where we could do like a little time skip, and everyone would go to their internships, with Deku going to Gran Torino. So Deku, he doesn't have full control of One for All. He still has somewhat of it doesn't really hurt him that much, because he's using it on the parts that manifest into different animal parts, so it doesn't hurt him as much, especially when he turns into animals that don't have bones, similar to Squid. So he would still make the same introduction that Gran Torino usually does, where he thinks he's dead, and Deku would freak out, saying like, "Oh my gosh, like, he's dead." And Gran Torino would be like, "Oh, I'm alive." And at this point, Deku doesn't really know what to say about him, so he's really confused and doesn't see how a person who seems senile could actually help him. So eventually as Gran Torino is looking through Deku's stuff, Deku would notice, and Gran Torino would just say like, "Hey, just throw 100% smash at me with all your force. I want to see how it is." And Deku's confused, like, "What? Why would I do that?" He's like, "Come on, just do it." and Deku does. But he uses his power with it. He uses his tentacles to do it, to try to hit, or basically he does like almost like a whip, basically with his hand. And Gran Torino's like, no, I want to see it without your power. And Deku's like, well, I've never really tried it without it. And this is where Gran Torino's like, that's the reason why you can't just rely on your quirk. You also have to use your body normally, because what if there's a quirk that will nullify it, or something that counters your quirk? You need to be able to just use your normal body using One for All. So he takes his advice and he tries to try to do a small percentage in his finger, because he knows how powerful it is, and he ends up breaking his finger. Or I guess not really. I would say that it's kind of bruised at this point, and because Deku is a little bit stronger than he was in canon, just because of the training that he's gone through, but not too much. And he's a little bit more experienced, just because he's able to use 100% in his animal limbs. He doesn't know how the power feels, so it's a little bit different. And Gran Torino's like, see, that's a little bit better, but you just can't use so much energy in just one attack. You need to spread it out throughout your body, or else parts of your body are gonna get hurt. So, or he doesn't say that exactly, but he just says that you can't just use 100% on one part of your body. It doesn't make sense. You have to feel like it's natural. So after this, he would cook Torino that kind of fishy cake, and this is where he would get the idea of spreading it throughout his body, just like how something gets cooked over the microwave. He makes this analogy, and this is where he actually gets the idea. After this, he starts testing it out, and this is where he actually unlocks Full Cowl, being able to really use a small percentage all over his body, just so he doesn't canon. And this is where he tests that out for a few days, and after that, this is where Gran Torino would basically ask him to go to Tokyo with him, so that they could fight villains and things like that, basic hero work. So on their way there to Tokyo, their train is actually stopped by the Nomu, because this is an attack on Hosu City, I believe that's the name. And because of this, Gran Torino is forced to push the Nomu outside of the subway, and Deku has to follow. He ends up losing Gran Torino, and he actually sees someone there. He actually sees what's his name? He actually sees Ida fighting Stain, and well, not really fighting, but it's because it's a one-sided battle. Stain is basically on top of him, about to stab him, and this is where Deku actually comes to help him. He actually he uses a little bit of Tamaki's he uses a move that Tamaki does, which is turning his arms into wings and his feet into kind of grasshopper legs. Or this part isn't Tamaki's moves, because Tamaki only doesn't eat too much things that are really abnormal, I guess, for Japanese culture, but Deku does. So before going to Tokyo, Deku would have ate a bunch of small things, just so that he can have that versatility when it comes to his power set at this moment. So yeah, he would have grasshopper legs, jumping from building to building, and using his wings that he would get. I believe Tamaki actually gets that from chicken, but I'm not too sure, because it's white. Well, I guess chicken could be white too, but they're white wings. If you ever played My Hero Wants Justice, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, he uses that to kind of glide a bit, and pushing himself from building to building pretty fast. And this is where he actually gets to Ida, and before Stain's about to strike, this is where he actually changes his hand into a clam and actually blocks it. Well, not really block it, but like basically since it has like a rounded shape to the clam, this basically makes it where the when he strikes down, it actually curves the blade, so it doesn't go straight in and doesn't do like a straight full-on hit. It actually makes the blade move as you hit go down, if that makes sense. So he basically deflects it almost, and this is where Stain's like, "Who are you?" And Deku wouldn't really respond to him. The first thing that Deku would say would be asking if Ida and Native were okay. Stain would see this and he would kind of respect Deku for not really focusing on him, but instead others, just like a true hero. And I think in this fight, Deku would not really have too much problems against Stain, mostly because of the manifestations that he can have on his, hands and things like that. Because if you don't remember, during the fight against, Tamaki versus, I think it was like the 3 bullets. I forgot the actual name of the thugs that were in Shisaki's base or Overhaul's base, but basically there was one character that was able to eat the most of the manifestations that that Tamaki had, as well as someone is able to steal it. So as they did this, there was no blood. So if Deku were to get his parts cut and they were a manifestation, there would not really be any blood, and therefore Stain would not be able to use his quirk on him. So after getting the confirmation that both Native and him will be okay for a time but are pretty injured, Deku would have to fight Stain, and I don't think he would involve Todoroki just yet, just because he isn't that connected with him like he was in canon. So he would have to use his manifestations. So he would have to use his tentacles to try to grab Stain. Stain would be a little bit faster at this point than Deku, but it is a alleyway, so there isn't much room for him to escape. So Deku would have an advantage just because of how much he can create, as well as the lengths and things like that. Stain would be able to cut a few of his tentacles off, but it wouldn't really matter too much, as the overwhelmingness of the tentacles would come and get him, as well as being able to put some protection on the tentacles, just how Tamaki was able to do. Deku would be able to do the same thing, and eventually he'd be able to grab Stain using the tentacles, as well as putting, I believe I saw this in a comment that I think it was like some octopi I guess, do have some neurotoxins that can stun people for a bit. I think it was either in the comments, or I think they did talk about it in the show. So yeah, that's really how they would basically inject him with some neurotoxins to kind of make him almost paralyzed for a bit, as he would wait for the rest of the heroes to come, which they eventually would do. Deku, I don't think in this one he would still get picked up by the Nomu, but he wouldn't have a hard time getting off of it or getting away from its grip, being that he has his own quirk and being able to basically cut off the Nomu's kind of limbs that are actually attached to him or holding on to him, as well as Endeavor there being the one who could just shoot it down using one of his fire javelins, I guess. So yeah, this is gonna be in the video. If you like my content, please subscribe. If you want to see more, then please like the video and tell me down below what ifs you want me to do, whether it be ones I've already done and just do extra parts to it, or I can do new what ifs if you want. If you made it to the end of the video, please comment down CS so I know that you support the channel. So with that being said, this is gonna be the video. So yeah.